On this episode of AV Week, Biamp has been purchased by Highland Partners. We talk with Joe Andrulis about that deal. Also talk about the HDMI 2.1 spec. All that and more next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 327, recorded Friday, December 1st, 2017. Bigger, faster, stronger AV.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Extron Electronics and by Christie Digital.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audiovisual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. We are starting out this week's episode with a little bit of special news. Our top story today came down late yesterday afternoon from Dallas by way of Beaverton, Oregon. And that is that longtime industry veteran Rashid Scaff is assuming the helm of Biamp after leading Highland Partners' acquisition of Biamp Systems. Joining us today to talk about that very acquisition is an old friend of this program. His name is Joe Andrulis, and he is joining Rashid at Biamp. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, Tim. Thank you for having me, and I'm delighted to be back in your rotation.
Absolutely, dude. You're more than you were more than welcome before this happened. Just for the record, I want to go over a timeline for you with you. May of 2014, Herrmann purchased AMX. And the reason I bring that up because both Rashid and you worked at AMX at the time. Yes. A year and some months later, both you and Rashid resigned from AMX by Herrmann. So that puts us somewhere in the summer of 2015. What exactly have you been doing for the last year and a half?
Well, Rashid and I have stayed in contact since that point. So we'd always discussed finding an opportunity to work together, and weren't exactly sure where that might have been, but clearly the AV space is an area we both know well and love dearly. And for a number of years, Rashid and I kind of were working on somewhat separate projects. I was working for a market research data organization, and Rashid was assisting some investment firms in evaluating opportunities for investment for each of their funds. And many of those opportunities tended to be in the AV space. And in the course of those conversations, he did some work with Highlander Partners.
Okay. And
he found the Highlander Partners philosophy and the people there to be a really great partnership for him, and he committed to working with them full time. And then I joined him there about a little over a year ago. And since that time, we've been studying a variety of different opportunities, broadly in the smart building space, but also pro AV in particular, and have looked at a lot of different candidate companies. And Biamp was always a company that was at the forefront of the list, even at our time at AMX. We'd always been, admiring what the brand of Biamp and the products that the company produced, its position within the market. And I won't go through the long trail that led us to today, but I'm just happy that it worked out that the ownership of Biamp, the previous ownership of Biamp, Lomar, and Highlander Partners, and Rashid and I were able to find a way to make this deal work.
Well, you mentioned that Biamp was always at the top of your list.
Yes.
I would agree with you as a former programmer and somebody who's dealt in DSPs, but the journalist in me has to ask the question, why?
I would say that it was the respect that they have within the channel, the integrator and consultant channel. We always, as a manufacturer ourselves, admired their products. We actually had the opportunity to use them. They worked in conjunction with many of those at AMX. Mm-hmm. And when we were looking at it, we kind of carried that admiration forward and were, similarly, or therefore, were quite interested in the brand. In the course of doing our market evaluation, though, we also did some market surveys, leveraging my background in market research.
Yep.
And all it did was confirm what we already had believed ourselves, which was the channel, and which both internationally, domestically, in the consultant and integrator community really viewed Biamp and the Biamp brand to be one of the strongest, really quite the strongest brand overall on many, many dimensions, in the product, in the behavior of the company, in historical innovation, a variety of different dimensions, technical support, many of the things that are most important to consultants and integrators both. Biamp just scored very, very well on that. So all it did was confirm that this was a brand that was a great brand today, was a wonderful platform on which we could build an even bigger enterprise.
One of the questions that integrators are going to have, just like they do with every merger and acquisition, is, okay, what does this mean, right? Moving forward, here we are. We're recording this on December 1st. We're a month out before the new year. What does this mean for the integrators and the technicians who use Biamp products day in and day out going forward?
Great question, and you're right. It's going to be asked. And one of the important things to understand: this is very different than AMX being acquired by Herrmann. This is a new investment owner of Biamp. So it is not a company that is going to take Biamp and blend it into its existing operations. Biamp is the flagship of Highland Partners' entry into the Pro AV space. And so what they can expect is that Biamp is going to continue to be the Biamp that they know and love for decades. The difference will be it'll have obviously a leader, but a leader that they know quite well. And I hope that many of them continue to have a high degree of respect for Rashid. And with the new investment partner, there's going to be an even greater strength of financial backing to Biamp's plans going forward. So in the short term, they should see nothing different. It'll be the same great Biamp, same great products, same great technical support that they've grown to admire and love for decades. And in the future, it's going to be a Biamp that will be in a position to extend that same sort of support and product innovation into new areas, new geographies, even new markets. So hopefully more of what you love.
All right, very good. Well, that'll be a good last word, sir. You are actually traveling today back from the great Northwest, so we will let you go. How can people get a hold of you at the new Biamp if they're so inclined, or how do they get in touch with Biamp in general?
Well, in Biamp in general, go to the website. There's a variety of different contact points you'll find there. I'd love to hear from everybody personally, old friends and new friends to be made. And I can be reached at joe.andrulis. His last name is Andrulis at biamp.com. And, of course, you can find me on LinkedIn and send me a message there as well. And I'd love to hear from you.
All right, very good. Joe Andrulis from Biamp, thank you so much for your time, sir. And, again, very, very excited for you and Rashid and all of our friends at Biamp.
Thank you, Tim.
Now we turn to our panelist of guests with us this week. First and foremost, my buddy and pal and my fashion advisor. His name is Brock McGinnis from Westbury National. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, Tim. As always, glad to be here on AVNation.
Thank you, sir. And with us, well, he's new to us, but he is not new to the industry. Longtime industry veteran. His name is Bob Sharp, and now he works for our buddies over at Utelegy. How are you, sir?
Doing real good, thank you. Yes, very pleased to be with with Utelegy. I've just been on board for about a month, and it's going to be an exciting ride. It's going to be fun times.
It is. I've been a big fan of Frank and Scott and the folks at Utelegy for a long time. Well before they ever became underwriters, well before anything when I was a programmer. The product itself is very interesting. So let's talk about another underwriter of ours, and that's Biamp. We just heard from Joe Andrulis, who is now from Biamp. He's from Biamp by way of Highland Partners. And also another longtime industry vet, Rashid Skaff. From these two folks came from AMX. They've been out of the industry, I guess you could say that, for the last couple of years. As Joe indicated in the interview, they've been looking for somebody for about a year. So Brock, I'm going to start with you on this. This is not the first company, not the first manufacturer to be picked up by an investment firm. We've talked about this. I think the last time you were on, we talked about an integrator, being picked up by a company that was backed by an investment bank. What does this say for Biamp, first of all, But secondly, what does it say again about the industry?
Very positive news for the industry. I think not that Biamp was purchased. That's not positive. What's positive is that the outside world is looking at the audiovisual industry as being a solid business, and that there are companies now, they're not short-term, entrepreneur-oriented, single product-oriented, but these are real manufacturers. And of course, Biamp has become, I think, the preeminent audio DSP company for sure within our industry. Certainly how we treat them at Westbury. And I think it's terrific that their position in the industry is going to become, for Highland Partners, the cornerstone or keystone of what could be another large conglomerate. I think that's great.
Well, Bob, I want to bring you on this. Brock mentioned the large conglomerate. One thing that Joe said was that this was Highland Partners' first step into AV. You were around when SVSI and AMX got together, AMX and Herrmann, and that was that. I'm not going to say that was a weird deal, but the way that they worded the deal, because AMX had already been purchased by Herrmann at that point, and then AMX purchased SVSI. Walk me through, I guess, the differences between a large conglomerate and selling off to, a single entity.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Herrmann, that they acted for, apart from their automotive business, which was, on the retail side of things, which was very separate. But if you look at the Pro AV side, they acted as a holding company, master distributor, however you wanted to, look at that, with individual companies like JBL, Crown, AKG, AMX, Martin Lighting, etc., operating as individual companies with their own engineering, their own P&L, marketing, trade shows, all the things. They acted as independent companies. Herrmann's desire to sort of de-silo those to become Herrmann Professional Solutions, kind of on the face of it made sense, but I do think there is a risk of, losing sight of what you do well. And, the classic example of that to me is Lego. Lego has done an incredible job of expanding and, changing, and adapting to new things, but never losing sight of the fact they make a little plastic brick. And they do plastic bricks better than anybody else in the world ever has done, and made a lot of money doing it. And I think there is a concern when you try and say, I'm bringing audio and video and control and lighting and all into sort of one bucket, that you can lose the people within those original silos sort of feel defocused. That their pride in their engineering, the pride in their uniqueness in a particular product segment tends to feel it's got diluted. And I think that's very apparent on the sales side, where you've sort of got suddenly you've got a sales guy who's like a manufacturer's rep. They've got 20 different product lines they're supposed to sell, and our industry tends to like technical salespeople, that know the product, know what it can do, kind of really, you don't need to refer back to a technical support team or something, that they're capable of representing the product pretty strongly, as salespeople. And I think that's certainly something I saw in Herrmann, I believe got lost, where you had sort of basically salespeople who, say, suddenly represented 20, 30 different products. And could not be technically competent in and expert in all those different products.
It's tough, and I'm not sure that AMX was all that successful at folding companies into their culture.
No, I'd agree. Yeah.
Prior, there was a great West Coast switching and distribution company that they bought and folded in. There was a UK digital signage company, some other miscellaneous bits and pieces, and I'm not sure that there's a great track record there of creating a conglomerate.
No, that's kind of really my point. I mean, again, that was definitely in Rashid's day, under AMX. I mean, it was, grow revenue by accretive, you buy a $5 million company, you've just added $5 million to your revenue.
Herrmann Pros customer range is enormous. They're in the music store business. They're in the large venue business. They're in the the live entertainment business, architectural lighting. Bringing this back to Biamp, I think as a customer, and I'm under the impression we are probably Biamp's largest customer in Canada, or certainly one of the largest in Canada. We are looking for the same range of dependable service and relationships and product quality and product development that we have had in the past. The evolution of our relationship with Biamp has been based around the quality of people that they've got. Our reps are fantastic. Their managers are fantastic. Ron Camden, who's been running sales for 30 years for that company, he's retiring now, but he's really set a tone for Biamp's core come to market promise, which is we keep our word and we'll back you up and we will take care of you. And if there's something that doesn't go wrong with, or there's something that goes wrong with the product, we're going to take responsibility for making sure that becomes correct. Correct. Yeah. And it's been fantastic. They're a key vendor of ours, a key partner, and have this stellar reputation for doing what they say they're going to do and doing it really well.
I mean, a challenge that I think also occurs when you look at, if I'm a Biamp and I'm saying I need to add XYZ to the portfolio of what Biamp does, is you're very unlikely to be able to go buy a company that does that and say, everybody move to Portland. Right. I mean, and I was involved in this many years ago, back in the sort of .com era. I worked for a .com company called 3D Labs, a UK company that did the first 3D processing chip for the PC platform for graphics boards, and we .com came and everybody made loads of money, which we went and spent and bought a company out of Huntsville, Alabama, which is where I now live. And, this was a UK engineering West Coast.com from the sales and marketing side and financial side. And then we bought a company off Intergraph Computer Systems in Huntsville. And, it was impossible to bring those three cultures together. It just was. And, you could not break down the barriers of, because if we'd have said to the guys from Intergraph, the Intense 3D team we bought, and there was 100 of them in Huntsville, oh, well, you've all got to move to Milpitas or Sunnyvale if you want a job, they would just say, well, none of us are moving. I mean, it's simple as that.
Yeah.
So then where do you manage it from, and which culture do you embrace? And and I think that's a challenge for a company that's as long established as Biamp. What was it, 1976 or so? I think they started.
40 years. Yeah.
40 years. In a fairly kind of culturally unique part of the U.S. And how do you buy it then if they're saying this is the first of a series of acquisitions, and you say I'm going to buy let's say they looked at buying, not now, but if they'd have bought SVSI, for example, other side of the country, completely, again, no one would have ever moved. Not one single engineer from SVSI would have said, oh, yes, I want to go live in Portland. So, then you have real challenges of management. You have real challenges of culture. And again, your sales forces, your sales, and it's harder than it's a lot harder than it seems on the face of it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen. Let's hope that Rashid and Joe and the team figure that out. Let's move on to our next story here. Our last story, actually. The HDMI forum has released the HDMI 2.1 specification. As a tech manager, I thought that HDMI was a 4-letter word. I still kind of think that way. But a couple of things they've got going on with them. It gives higher video resolutions, including 8K 60, which is just crazy, as well as 4K 120, and bandwidth capability up to 48 gigs per second. Bob, I want to start with you on this. What does this new spec mean for folks in the AV industry that are transporting a lot of these signals?
Well, I think, from the SVSI perspective, we always looked at HDMI as that sort of, last mile, or in fact, last 3 feet transport from something to the physical display projector. And certainly when you get to these higher resolutions and you get to, or higher frame rates, the practicality of transporting that in a distributed video fashion, matrix switching fashion, gets tougher and tougher and tougher. The backplane you'd need to do a 8K switcher in HDMI, pure HDMI, is technically very, very challenging. How do you get people to buy the new TV? How do you get people to buy, the latest and greatest? You just simply say, well, yours is obsolete because now we've got 8K and everything. If you're still using 4K, you're, a dinosaur. And it brings challenges to the commercial AV industry that they don't care about. And I think that's the bottom line, really. They do not give a care.
Correct.
About our concerns in Pro AV if it is directed to, which it is, to selling higher resolution screens.
Well, Brock, to that point, as you're interfacing with your clients,
right?
They've just now given you the capability, at least from a transport standpoint,
right,
of delivering 8K. So does that move the needle for you or your clients?
This is me jumping up and down. So I sell professional and commercial audiovisual equipment to people who use it to do what they do. And so a reason to sell them something new, something better, something different, something bigger, something faster, something stronger is actually what I do. And it's why I'm going to have a good job tomorrow, as I do today. And I don't say that flippantly, but technology changes. And we're in the process now of updating clients who we built great systems for 5 and 6 and 7 years ago. And 5, 6, 7 years ago, those were state-of-the-art systems. Some of them have 5-wire.
Wow.
And so today's laptops, don't play very well with 5-wire. There are laptops today that are producing outputs of greater than 4K resolution. These are off the shelf. Somebody goes and buys them. They may not know that they need them or that they want them or that anybody needs 4K or 8K or 16K. But the reality is that, as Bob points out, to keep the factories going, the consumer electronics industry and the graphics card industry and the display industry are going to continue to turn out better and better and better product. And the consumer's point of reference to what is a great picture is going to continue to get better and better and better. And if we're going to transport higher resolution signals, we need higher resolution or higher gigabit per second cables and switchers and scalers and everything else. And that's great, because every time a system falls over, we as an integrator get a call. And the call goes, Brock, our system couldn't handle the laptop that came in yesterday to make a presentation.
Yeah.
And, one of my standard lines with our clients is, if your audiovisual system is older than your laptop, your audiovisual system or the components therein may in fact be obsolete. Why did you buy a new laptop? You needed more processing power to run the latest applications. Why does anybody need an iPhone 10 or an iPhone X? Well, it's because the applications that are being developed for my iPhone 6S are going to make it slower and slower, and the battery less and less efficient. And as a result, 1 or 2 weeks, years from now, I may have to buy a new phone simply to keep up.
I think there has been an interesting thing, though, to me, where, in one way, we're driving towards higher resolutions, better quality pictures, etc. But then also simultaneously, we've gone to the good enough scenario of soft codecs for video conferencing, as we're doing
like
now.
This.
Yeah.
Yes.
It happened years ago in audio with MP3 files, didn't it? I mean, MP3 is just became good enough. And as audio engineers can tell us all day long how bad an MP3 is, but the reality is it became good enough. And we found that, if I go back to my SVSI days, there was this sort of weird challenge of saying, well, we wish you, would use less bandwidth on our networks, and we wish you could, get this stunning image quality at, with a, fraction of the bandwidth. And then it would be, oh, by the way, but we need 4K.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it's math, fellas. I mean, 4K is going to take up 4 times the bandwidth of 1080p.
No, Bob, you have to get 4K in 100 kilobits a second. That's it.
And so it is. I think there is a sort of, strange thing here where, and it is driven by consumers, the need, say, to sell screens, but then at the same time, our customers are accepting good enough, and the broadcast industry has seen that dramatically over the past few years, where cell phone video out in the field is good enough for real-time news gathering. The immediacy of the news from people with cell phones or whatever, as opposed to sending a news crew out, has superseded the need to send a film crew out half the time, a video crew out, and it's good enough. And the broadcasters had to learn to live with that, and work out how to build that into their platforms. So, I think it is a consumer-driven thing. I mean, as you said, the cable, the HDMI connector, not our favorite connector in the world by any stretch, but that ship sailed, and we have to live with it. And we can all wish for DisplayPort, and we can all wish for whatever, and Thunderbolt and whatever. But the reality is, HDMI it's the VHS beta battle, isn't it? I mean, it's not the best. Not the best solution, but it's the solution that won the war.
The one that won. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right, guys, that is going to do it for us. Thank you both so much. Mr. Brock McGinnis, how do people find you and or Westbury National?
Well, we're at westbury.com. I am brock.m at westbury.com. And of course, I'm pretty active on Twitter most days. My handle is at Brock McGinnis.
At Brock McGinnis. Mr. Bob Sharp, thank you so much for joining us, sir. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And how do people find you or Uteligy?
Certainly, well, Uteligy.com. My email address is bob.sharp, SHARP, at Uteligy.com. And obviously, we'll be looking forward to meeting everybody at ISE and Intercom and all these things as we expand the company.
All right, very good. My name is Tim Albright. Don't follow me on the Twitters. I'm complaining about the Bears at this point. But go by the website, if you would, please, AVNation.tv. AVNation.tv. You will find this program and a host of others. While you are there, please go by our underwriter section. These are the folks that help support AVNation and allow us to do what we do, including bringing you ISE. Uteligy is one of those, so we thank them for their support. Biamp is one of those. We've actually had 2 or 3 underwriters get purchased this year, so it's been very interesting. So we thank them for their support. Also, if you would do me a favor, last year about this time, we branched out and we did our first ever awards. We called it the first annual AVNation Readers' Choice Awards, and we're doing it again this year. If you go to the front page at AVNation.tv, we are doing the second annual AVNation Awards. We're doing it a little differently. So you, our fabulous listeners and viewers and readers, you get to choose who is in the category. So we have a nomination process that will go on during the month of December, and then we will tabulate those and put together the 3 choices for you to vote on during the month of January. So that is on the front page there at avnation.tv. You'll also find shows like this and HDMI and our programming show called A State of Control and all sorts of other things at the website. avnation.tv, avnation.tv. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. This has been AV Week.